Guys, it's me, it's Queen Aset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another exciting edition of Ask An Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. So someone asked me last night if Aquarius are control freaks. And the short answer is yes. It made me laugh because I was like, how dare you? Yes, we are control freaks. Basically, it depends on what degree. There's from the little to a lot, a massive amount, okay? And this is what I've come to find. It depends on, one factor is how much fire is in the person's chart. I've noticed that those of us who have a lot of fire and we're more outgoing, we have a tendency to be more bossy. We have a tendency to be leaders, and we have a tendency to be more controlling of our environment and of situations. I think this is true of a lot of different zodiac signs, but another aspect of that is powerlessness. An Aquarius who feels powerless in any area of their life, or who has felt powerless in an area of their life, is more likely to be controlling. So like, for example, an Aquarius who grew up being abused as a kid is more likely to be a very controlling adult. They're going to want to try to, control their environment very carefully and control the people that are in their environment. An Aquarius who has experienced something very in their adult life that has made them feel powerless will be exactly the same way. So let's say an Aquarius who's in a bad relationship might be a real asshole at work. At work, this Aquarius might be a tyrant because at home they have no control over their environment. So when they get to work, they're like almost overcompensating. Okay. Some of us have natural born leadership abilities, and people will even think that we're being controlling sometimes when we're not. One time I was at a march, and I came to the march to join the march, to be one of the members of the march. Well, the march started and the leader had not shown up. Meantime, I had a group of people around me talking, passionately about the issue. And, I was real fiery in college. I was marching for Mumia Abu Jamal. I was, leading protests against racism. I mean, I was fiery in college. I was wearing a Black Panther beret. I was on my Afrocentric fiery back then, If you had met me back then, I was about as fiery and militant as they came, And I was standing there talking to this group about the issue, and somebody said, they're not coming. The leader called, she's not coming. I don't know what happened to the leaders. They just did not show up. They called somebody in the group and said they couldn't make it, and they just didn't come. So I was talking to the people, and we were talking. And I said, all right, well, I guess that's that. And the guy said, no, I got the bullhorn. Give the bullhorn to her. And he pointed at me, and everybody looked at me, and it was like, it must have been like 100 people gathered around us, and they were like, give her the bullhorn. And I was like, and my friend was with me. I'll never forget. It gives me goosebumps to tell this story. My friend was with me, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, fuck it. And I grabbed the bullhorn and started yelling and leading this group that continued to gather, 100, 200, 300 people continued to gather and go down the street. And I led the march all the way to City Hall, which is where we were going. And then we stood there and we did our chants and yelling and, all the things you do at a protest. And it was like, I didn't come to be the leader. I didn't come to be the control. I didn't come to be the leader. I just came to watch. I came to participate. And I can't tell you guys how many times that's happened to me. How many times I've come to an event to participate and ended up having to lead it because the leader either didn't show up or couldn't do it or something happened, And all of that leads to people's perception of us as control freaks because they don't realize that this was part of my destiny. It wasn't something that I did. It wasn't something that I planned. I didn't plan to come there and grab the bullhorn, It just happened. So That's one thing about us, you know. Another thing, if we really care about something, we're going to be more inclined to control that everything is okay with it, you know. Our children, for example, we're overprotective and with our kids like that sometimes. Any of our projects were like that. I remember one time when I first started my women's group, I had a friend who was supposed to be helping me with the group. And of course she wasn't really doing it. She was doing it when she felt like it, half-assing it. So I was so pissed because it was like, this is my baby. Why are you bullshitting with it? You can't even make a paragraph without fucking typos? I was so pissed. And she couldn't understand why I was so angry with her. You know, but it wasn't because I wanted to be controlling. It was because you're fucking up my baby, you know? What are you doing, you know? So if we care about something, we're even more likely to be intensely controlling over it. And one of the things I have learned through evolution and time and trial and error is to stop trying to control the actions of other people. When I was young, I would always try to tell my friends what to do. You know, now I still give a lot of advice. I've given advice my whole life. People always ask me my opinion about things. And now, instead of being controlling, you know, giving the information and trying to control how the person uses the information, I just freely give and have no attachment to what they do with it. Because I had to learn that. Because what happens is that if you give somebody advice, if you give them gems, if you give them help, you expect them to take it and use it. And when they don't use it, you kind of piss like, well, what the fuck did you ask me for, you know? But I had to come away from that. Sometimes the advice you gave them is good, but they aren't ready to implement it. You know, sometimes they ain't built like that right now. They have to get to that space, but it was important for them to hear that message. You know, so I had to get to that point in my life where I realized, stop trying to control other people's evolution and let them figure that shit out on their own. Just give the message. If God just gives me a message, I give it and I'll just back up off it. So that part has changed. I've learned that you can't control other people. And if you do control them, you retard their ability to live their own life. You mess up their ability to make their own decisions, you know? So you have to give them a little something, something and stand back and let them figure things out for themselves. Another thing that stopped me from being controlling in particular is realizing it and saying to myself, that's not who I want to be. And realizing that I really couldn't control anything. Nothing. Once I realized that I really didn't control anything, I don't control nothing. We are on a rock right now. Literally, we're on a big rock. Hurling and through space. Okay? We control nothing. This rock is being held up by gravity. If the laws of gravity stop working, that's the end of us. You know? I can't even control that. I can't control even if I wake up or not. So once I realized through spirituality who the real head honcho was, who really had that juice, I was like, oh, okay. So I don't control anything. Once I realized that, I was like, oh my God, there's only one thing I really can control, and that's my mind. I can control my mind. I can control what I allow into my mind. I can control what I do with myself, my attitude. The only thing I can control is my vessel. That's it. And once I realized that my mind, my body, my spirit was all I really could control, I can control my environment. I can control what I let come towards me. I could control that, but I couldn't control anything else. And once I realized that, I became obsessed with controlling my thoughts, controlling my mind, controlling what I allowed myself to consume, controlling what I allowed myself to do. So I went from trying to control externally to controlling internally. Having self-control, not just giving in to my impulses. And if I want to do something that's fucked up, you know, don't do that. You know, I really got into inner control. You know, the yogis, the sages, martial artists always talk about it. I got into self-discipline, self-control, doing what I have to do. And once I got into that, I became a lot less externally controlling. I wish I had known that when I was younger, because a lot of things would be totally different. The way I handled a lot of things would have been totally different, you know? Even with my best friend, my BFF growing up, I always told her what to do, always tried to control her life. Not because I wanted to control her life, but because she would be making massive mistakes, massive ones, and they would be costing her. And I was like, oh my God, like, you know, always constantly trying to stop her from making these massive mistakes. But what I realized from spirituality is she needed to make those mistakes to figure out who she was. She had to learn her own life lessons, and I had to let her. So if I had known this younger, I think that would have been my big help, you know? But it took a long time for me to understand it. I still struggle with it sometimes, especially with my friends. When I see them doing stupid stuff, oh my God, it's so hard, you know, to just let them, you know, even if I say something, it's hard to say it kindly and then back off. Sometimes I'll still say nothing at all. Like, I still am doing that dance, you know? But realizing that they have to have their own experiences and that I control nothing is what really helped me with it. So yeah, you're right. Some Aquarius are very controlling. Some of the more introverted ones are less controlling. There's some Aquarius who aren't as loud as me and they're a little less controlling, sometimes a lot less controlling as far as that's concerned. But most of us have that energy of trying to control at least our environment. And it's not easy for us. And most of us is out of fear. That's another thing. Remember I said before that powerlessness, if you've ever been powerless before, you sometimes have a fear of being powerless again. So you're more likely to try to control things, people, and situations for them to go in your favor, a positive in your favor. So sometimes it's just fear. Like, you're afraid of something going wrong. You're afraid if I don't control this situation, it's not going to go right, you know, that kind of thing. So you're right about the Aquarius. It is something that we have to dance with. Take care. I hope this helps.